My name is Robbie Sharvah, and as Gary has said, I'm the filler. So Don Jones was supposed to be here, and I have also met Don, and I really have a high level of respect for him. And there's a lot of interesting things that are going on in San Diego. I don't have a formal presentation, but what I'm going to talk about is mobility generally in healthcare. Healthcare is a very complex and a very distributed, or you might say, industry, in the sense that there are just too many touch points for a patient or anybody to be able to get care. And largely, you talk about profitability, really you have to think about whose profitability are you talking about, because there is the payer, there is the provider. And I use those categories as big categories. And the whole system in the US has been transaction oriented, where you paid for piecemeal, or you might say a single transaction, as opposed to an overall health of a patient. That is changing, okay? So I think that's a good news. And with that, the whole healthcare industry is going to change. And that is going to really disrupt what we have become used to. Let's say, when I say we, I'm talking about the healthcare industry, as the systems of choice today. The systems of choice, I think there was a discussion at lunchtime that we were talking about, that the healthcare systems, so the vendors have really created systems that are proprietary and kind of make it difficult to interact or interoperate for interoperability. But I don't think that is just the vendors alone. I think if you look at it, even when there is interoperability possible, the providers also have that same headset, which is this data is mine, I'm responsible for this data, and this patient will come back to me, and that's my patient, okay? And I think when you take these two headsets, the only thing that is going to change that is the change that is happening in the payer model at this point in time with the accountable care organizations, the bundle payments, the population health, all of those kind of things. There's a very interesting change also that is happening, is that the meaningful use, which is between $40 to $60 billion incentivizing the providers to adopt healthcare technology, or you might say EHR systems. One of the requirements that is very important is that now the providers are going to be required to share information over the web in a digital manner with the patients. And a minimum criteria has been set in the stage 2. Will have to have access through the. Now, interesting, when you're in San Diego, it's probably not that big of a deal to have 5% of the patients go through that. But if you're in East LA, that's a completely different subject. Okay, so there are going to be challenges around it, and there are complaints being set up, and how are we going to meet this? But the main point behind all this is the industry is being forced to change. The additional part of this whole thing is that when you look at all these insurance reform that has gone on, and the access that has been increased through the healthcare insurance exchanges and things like that, one of the criteria, one of the aspects that is not yet publicized too well is that the out-of-pocket expenses for the patients are going to continue to rise. They're already high, or not high, but they're significant. But in real terms, they're not that high. But I think they're going to continue to change, and depending on your, depending on your income stream, you're going to find that a large percentage of your expenditure is going to go on healthcare, regardless of whether you are in which population, which income group. And it's going to be felt more at the lower level, less at the higher level. But that is going to change. And when so far this whole environment of healthcare has really revolved around three main entities. It's the provider, it's the payer, which is the insurance companies, and it's the employer. Because the employer paid the payer to provide insurance, to get the care for the large portion of the population, and that's how it was set up. But now as the out-of-pocket expenses increase, I think you're going to have the patient more involved in why am I paying so much? And I had this test done before, can't I use the same test? 11% of the lab tests are redundant. 30% of the radiology tests are, you might say, not necessary, deemed not necessary on an overall basis. And largely done because the information is not shared. So really we are coming very close to not an institution-specific patient, what you call aggregation, or aggregation of patient data, but we are really looking at, should I have the same ability as I have in my, I say, financial transactions, that I can go anywhere in the world, put my ATM card into the ATM, and know exactly how much I can pull out at what time. And I cannot do that if I walk across the corridor to another physician office, and they have no idea what tests were run on me. So when you think about from that concept, we have a long way to go there. But I think mobility is the answer for that. Now let me tell you the mobility space. There are over 40,000 applications on iOS alone. And they're increasing on a daily basis, and I think the announcement that was recently made with the health kit is probably going to expand that even further. Android and Windows have additional on top of that. So when you think about that, there are thousands and thousands and thousands of applications, and you can categorize them in several different, in just a few categories. Most of them are monitoring, which is basically what you talked about, is that there is a monitoring device attached, whether that be a sensor, whether that be for oxygen, for diet, for glucose, or blood pressure, or weight, or whatever the case might be, and be able to track it and report it. And that's useful if you're managing your own health and are interested in it. But I also study that most of these applications, first of all, have very low download, you might say, interest, which means that people download it, okay? And when there is a download, the retention time or usage time for these has a curve that goes like this, okay? And the reason is it's not engaging the patient. You do it for a while, but it's like everything else that doesn't interest you, you drop it after some time. So how do you engage patients in healthcare? That is really the billion-dollar question, okay? And that will happen when we really have the patient, provide the patient ability to carry their own record that is easily understandable. It's not the thousands of pages with all the reports and every single image that was ever taken on the patient that is really important. It is much more important to have a very current patient record that is understandable, but you can dig into it if you want to. You can share the data with another clinician. You happen to be in Orange County and you live in San Diego, and something happens, you need to see a physician. You should be able to share that in the country or even outside the country. So think from that perspective. And the reason I'm talking about these things is today I do work with, I've been in healthcare for over 30 years. Started out with GE, and after several senior executive positions, I came to Toshiba Medical in diagnostic imaging as a VP of marketing. Went back to GE and was the first global Six Sigma leader. under Jeff Immelt, and left them and basically started and led 3 cloud-based clinical integration platforms. And a lot of them have been through mobility. And I'm kind of very interested in the mobility space. And that what is the next healthcare IT breakthrough is what interests me. And why is it going to happen? I think those are the 2 most important things. I think there are technologies being deployed right now. There's telemedicine, there's telehealth, there's telemonitoring, there's all kinds of tele going on right now, okay, in healthcare. And they have limited capabilities. Readmissions is a very big thing for the hospitals, and there's penalties involved. There's financial incentive to kind of do that, and so there has been a little uptake in that area. But when you think about it, these are all point solutions, and they're only used for a certain period of time, and then they're dropped. That's not engagement. And engagement happens regardless of which payer I am with, regardless of which provider I am with. My information is with me, and I can get the proper care when I need it, because the provider who's giving me the care is aware of what my condition is. It may not make a lot of difference for a lot of the folks that are healthy, but when you think about it, that almost 100 million people have some sort of chronic illness, and 70%, estimates are 70% of the healthcare cost is spent on chronic illnesses. Managing chronic illnesses is very important, and as people get into the ACOs and the new care organizations and those kind of environments, is how you maintain the patient, how you maintain the populations that you serve, that's going to become important. And I think those are the incentives that are going to really drive these kind of solutions. I think most of the healthcare leaders at this point in time really have to think beyond the point solutions. They have to think beyond the gadgets. They have to think beyond solving a particular issue. They have to think of a functional architecture of where is the healthcare going and how am I going to participate in it, and where is the mobility going to be able to help me. Whether that be in monitoring patients, whether that be in providing home health care, whether that be in really doing what you call care management, or whether that be in any sort of situation, mobility has to be part of it. So when you start thinking, the first thing I recommend is to create an architecture as to how the mobility is going to fit into the whole business paradigm of the institution or the care or the area that they are responsible for, before you start solving these things. I have seen, and right now I'm I'm a partner with the private equity group, and we work on, let's say, transacting on hospitals and health systems, and I get to see a lot of systems in the market. And most of the times when I'm involved, what I see is the IT function has been a drag along. It's not been at the table with the business folks, with the folks that are really driving, they understand the change, or in trying to understand the change and respond to the change that is happening in the marketplace, okay? And so it's always like we are behind the curve on, I need a solution for this, you don't have it. What's the point of paying X million dollars for this or that, or $1 billion for this or that? And believe me, $1 billion is not a lot. I know of institutions that have spent EHR deployment, in their EHR deployment, spent close to $1 billion or more, okay? So you're done spending this kind of money, and I don't have this. Well, then you'll always be behind. So the key point is mobility is going to be a part and parcel of the future of healthcare. And I think that needs to be really studied on a functional architecture level and has to take a center stage. It cannot be just one of the tools that you use to solve a single problem in an institution. Yes?
Yeah, no question. With some possible legislation around bandwidth availability and the fact that mobile devices don't have a large storage capacity, how much of the solution architecture discussion would you want to have around the capability in storage and over-the-wire transmission of information? So, for example, if you start with, we want to make all of this mobile, this is going to be the right thing for our customers, if you will, how much of that can actually be proliferated to the device given the device limitations?
I think the mobility poses a lot of challenges, and it is a lot of benefits as well as challenges, and far more challenges than your regular other systems, okay? From the perspective of they will get misplaced, they will get lost, they will get into different hands, and so therefore putting a lot of data on it, you have to encrypt it, you have to ensure that it doesn't, but the more you can have in the cloud, the better. Okay? So if the data does not reside, application can reside, but if the data does not reside in the device, it's much better. Now, I would say that in that regard, how much data can you download? Well, that's the key. That's really the key, because you don't have to have every single thing available. You have to be able to kind of categorize, and that's where the analytics and what's the sum, and then be able to find just to be able to search for the specific things that you're looking for. So you have to think like a clinician as opposed to a technician. Okay, so that would be my comment on that. Yeah.
I have a question. I come from a technology background in Broadcom. There's a lot of data that is on this phone. I think it can be made secure, right? Because we have fingerprint readers, and there's other technology that's coming that makes data secure enough on this device, and there's storage on this device. So I think that problem will get solved as time progresses over the next few years. Then the real question I have is, how do you access the data from an individual's phone with a common set of APIs that everybody in the industry uses? And so you're getting consistent data that's accurate.
Okay.
And is there any industry?
Let's separate those two. Okay. One is accessing your data from the cloud, wherever that is. Okay. The other is, how does it get in the cloud from everywhere else? Okay. Because you're going to touch several different points to get your care, and how does all that get it? Now, if I start talking about, there are no standards. You talk about HL7, fine, great, dandy, but believe me, there are no standards. Even HL7 from one vendor to another vendor is different. You still have to do, you still have to rationalize those things, okay? So then there's another big issue, which nobody has talked about, but in the healthcare systems, everybody has their own patient identifier, okay? And there is no common identifier. And if you change your address, or if you change your payer, or if you change then there are many different, and you change, so now you have many different things that are changing on you, and there's no common identifier. So how do you do that, okay? So having a valid EMPI or a master patient index that kind of rationalizes all the places that you've been, and be able to aggregate the data, then to be able to take all of the information and be able to rationalize that, normalize all the data, even the data. You might say, I have CBC done at one, which is the blood panel done at one place and another place, but they might call sodium Na, they might call sodium, and now you have to normalize those things, okay? The reagents that are used, the tools that are used to do those kind of tests are different, so their normal ranges are different. I mean, you can go into so much of this that really, when you come down to it, it is a very big issue for healthcare. Standards will probably get formed at some point in time, but we are far away from them. We are far away also from true interoperability. We are still in the what you might call interface stage. That's not interoperability. That's just getting things from A to B, okay? True interoperability is far away for us. And I think the key thing is cloud-based solutions that normalize all this, rationalize the patient as much as possible, and present the information in a what you call consumable format, and that can then be dug into if needed later. I think that's the key.
So am I drawing the right conclusion from what you're saying? I was learning here a little bit, which is that given that there is no standards organization defining some set of common APIs and standards in the healthcare space on how to record all of this information, the big ecosystem guys like Apple or Android, through their mobile devices and the existing consumer base that they have, will have their own set of standards that the rest of the industry will start using just because they have consumers, they have the devices, they will have the wearable devices for patient monitoring.
See, when you think about the standards, which basically are necessary for having the APIs also, I think the key thing is, you know, when you come to the EHR world, there are some gorillas out there. Okay, you have the Epics and you have the Cerners and the likes, right? So there are two major groups that have been formed. Epic leads one, Cerner leads another. Do you think they talk to each other?